Welcome back to Jewish World Weekly on I-24 News. I'm Calev Ben David. Each week we focus on stories, issues, and personalities of Jewish interest here in Israel and in the diaspora, the global Jewish community. And we start with our top 5 items in the Jewish world, presented by Nicole Sedek. Nicole?
Thanks, Calev. Here are top 5 items in the Jewish world this week. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump warns the heads of universities that if they don't end anti-Semitic propaganda, they will lose their accreditation and federal taxpayer support. Adding, quote, if they permit violence, harassment, or threats against Jewish students, they'll face action from his administration for violating civil rights laws. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine condemns a march in the capital of Columbus by masked neo-Nazis waving swastika flags and chanting racial slurs against Jews and blacks. The governor said, quote, there's no place in this state for hate, bigotry, anti-Semitism, or violence. Pro-Palestinian groups call for a boycott of Netflix over the casting of Israeli actors Noah Cohen as Jesus' mother, Mary, and Ido Taco as her husband, Joseph, in the upcoming movie, Mary. Those boycotting claim it erases the Palestinian identity of the biblical figures. And the film also stars Anthony Hopkins as King Herod and premieres December 6th. Zablon Simentov arrives in Israel from Turkey 3 years after he was spirited out of Afghanistan in a secret rescue mission as the last Jew to leave the country under Taliban rule, ending 2,500 years of continuous Jewish presence there. And Berlin-born Frank Auerbach, who arrived in the UK in 1939 as part of the Kindertransport program to save Jewish children from the Nazis, and grew up to become one of Britain's greatest painters and member of the celebrated London School of Artists. He dies at the age of 93. May his memory be a blessing. Those are the top 5 items in the Jewish world this week. Back to you, Calev.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has been moving quickly to appoint the members of his new administration, and those choices have generally won praise from American Jewish groups, especially his putting pro-Israel lawmakers in key foreign policy posts, such as Senator Marco Rubio as Secretary of State, Representatives Mike Waltz as National Security Advisor, and Elise Stefanik as U.S. Ambassador to the UN. But there is one glaring exception, his choice of Matt Gaetz as Attorney General. Both the Anti-Defamation League and American Jewish Committee have urged Trump to withdraw his nomination of the controversial Florida congressman, citing his history of problematic remarks, including perpetrating anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Gaetz invited a Holocaust denier to the 2018 State of Union address, voted against the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act in the House, and called the ADL a, quote, racist organization for its criticism of Tucker Carlson's promoting the so-called replacement theory, which claims Jews want to bring in migrants of color to replace white people. And joining us now for more from Washington, D.C. is our senior U.S. correspondent, Mike Wagenheim. And Mike, Gaetz, a controversial pick for several reasons, but certainly there are Jewish groups that are expressing their concern over this.
No doubt whatsoever. And Matt Gaetz probably doesn't have the votes to be confirmed anyway, simply because he's just made so many enemies within the Senate and within the House with bombastic rhetoric, very controversial points of view. But in any case, it's Jewish groups that are standing up right now and saying he's not fit for office due to a number of comments and positions that he's taken. Number one, coming out against the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, which is pending right now in the Senate, for the reason he says is because it would make illegal saying that Jews killed Jesus, which he said is a historical position. It's in the Bible. Many experts would say that has long been disavowed of any truth. He's also courted with white nationalists. He brought one to a State of the Union address. He hired one who had white nationalist ties as a speechwriter for him. So there have been things in his past in terms of position and rhetoric that just don't comport with being the office holder responsible for executing the nation's laws, especially now that Jewish groups are looking to the Department of Justice, which Gates would head as Attorney General, to make sure that the laws that are on the books and the laws that are to come in regards to hate crimes are actually executed or prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. So the American Jewish Committee, nonpartisan organization, and the Anti-Defamation League, which Gates has said is a racist organization in the past, have both come out with published statements saying that they oppose his nomination and are urging President-elect Trump to withdraw it.
Right. Now, you mentioned the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, which he did vote against, but did pass in the House. It's now in the Senate. There's talk Senator Schumer, the outgoing majority leader, may try to push that through before he has to vacate that post. What are the chances of that happening?
There's been months to push it through since the House passed it, and there are calls on from both sides of the aisle right now in the House. Now it's coming from a Democratic House Representative, Josh Gottheimer, a Jewish member of the House, to push this through as a standalone bill. Schumer, though, appears to be a bit afraid of putting Democrats on the record in the Senate in terms of voting for this as a standalone act. There are pieces of it that tie into Israel. Some Democrats try to separate the two. You can criticize Israel without being anti-Semitic, even as they're spouting anti-Semitic tropes. So Schumer is trying to finagle this into a piece of the National Defense Authorization Act, the annual defense policy bill. There are some that are saying, okay, let's just get it done one way or another. There are others that saying Schumer, of all people, being the highest elected Jewish leader in American history, needs to push this through as a standalone, get it on the record where everybody stands. It should have enough votes to pass in the end because Republicans will vote for it. Schumer's just afraid he might put some Democrats in the Senate on the record as voting against it, hurting them possibly electorally or at least optically.
All right. Well, let's see if it makes it through before the new Senate Majority Leader comes in. Mike Wagenheim there in New York. Thank you for that. Now, sport is supposed to be one of those endeavors that brings people together, but the matches being played by Israeli soccer teams in Europe has only highlighted their discord, specifically the rising surge of anti-Israel incitement and anti-Semitic violence by some extremist elements among Arab and Muslim communities on the continent. Joe Brown has more on that in this report.
The fallout from the attacks on Israelis and Jews in the streets of Amsterdam by Muslim and Arab youths on November the 8th continues to shake the social foundations of the Netherlands and Europe's Jewish communities. The failure by police to control the anti-Semitic assaults following the Maccabi Tel Aviv Ajax Amsterdam soccer match.
They came really late. They came too late. They came when a lot of people were already hoarded, injured.
And the public discourse that followed led to resignations from the Dutch cabinet and a political crisis in the government.
Let's say that I'm ashamed that this happened in the Netherlands, and it's a terrible anti-Semitic attack, and we will not tolerate, and we will prosecute the perpetrators, and I'm deeply ashamed that it could happen in the Netherlands in 2024.
The violence in Amsterdam and the failure by authorities to address it has left the Dutch Jewish community shaken, in a nation that historically has served as a refuge for Jews persecuted elsewhere in Europe.
So the Jewish community feels a lot of anger and fear. Anger because they feel they were left alone, that people didn't step up and were helping them. And fear because, we all saw the images of the anti-Semitic violence. People were calling for a Jew hunt. And already the Jewish community here is being heavily secured.
The events in Amsterdam led to unprecedented security arrangements for the match a week later in Paris between the Israeli and French national football teams. 4,000 police were deployed outside the stadium and on the city streets. While in a show of solidarity, French President Emmanuel Macron attended the match with his predecessors François Hollande and Nicolas Sarkozy. Despite the security concerns, local Jewish fans came out to show their support for both the Israeli and the French sides.
Of course, I'm here tonight first to condemn the atrocious anti-Semitic acts happened in Amsterdam, just a few kilometers away from Anne Frank House. it was like really symbolic to us in this particular city. But I'm here first also to support the French and the Israeli team. We're here to celebrate life and peace, and we're here to celebrate the only country who can welcome us Jewish people. We're here to support Israel and the right of Israel to exist.
Some French Jews feel conflicted between their concern over anti-Semitism in Europe and their opposition to the policies of the current Israeli government, making it a challenge to find a safe middle ground.
Very difficult, because or you are with Israel, or you are with the Palestinians. We are with Israel and with the Palestinians against any violence against civilians. We are strongly opposed against the politics of Netanyahu, Gaza and Lebanon. Strongly opposed. But all together, we fight against antisemitism, so it's a bit difficult.
Okay, sweet boy, go now on your journey.
The families of American Jewish victims of the October 7th attack and of Israeli Americans who have lost their lives fighting Hamas since then are striking back at the terror group's main sponsor, Iran. Their battlefield is a U.S. federal court in Washington, D.C. Lawyers representing the victims have filed a suit seeking damages from Iran for the funding and logistical support it has provided to Hamas, Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. The suit is being filed on behalf of the 46 U.S. citizens killed on October 7th, the dozen taken hostage that day, and some 36 American Israelis killed fighting in the IDF since then. Among the latter group is Moshe Leiter, whose father Yechiel has been chosen as Israel's next ambassador to the U.S., and who spoke with I-24 News about his late son after he fell in battle in Gaza.
He was a very special person who, after serving 15 years in Special Forces, one of Israel's most elite commando units, he decided to go to medical school. He was in the first med school class at Ariel University. And as he was studying, he continued to dedicate time to the Army. He did 80 to 90 days a year in reserve duty, and he also went to battalion commander's course, which he finished with honors.
The evidence cited in the case includes documentation of a 2022 meeting between Yehia Sinwar and commanders of Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps, in which he requests a $7 million payment to help fund the October 7th attack. The legal basis for the suit is the Foreign Sovereign Immunities and Anti-Terrorism Act, which is also the foundation of a similar lawsuit filed last summer by the Anti-Defamation League against Iran, Syria, and North Korea.
The U.S. government has frozen funds of the Islamic Republic of Iran and these other governments. We have access to these dollars. So we are suing on behalf of 130 victims of 10/7. Either they were killed and we're representing their families. They were wounded or they were taken hostage. We're suing the government of Iran for $4 billion. And let me be clear, when we win, Caleb, and we will win, we will prove definitively in a court of law what everyone knows, that Iran is the largest single state sponsor of terror in the world. They have Jewish blood on their hands, and we will make them pay.
Making Iran, Hamas, and other terror groups and their state sponsors pay for their crimes will mean a long, complicated, and arduous journey through the U.S. court system, but one the families of the victims hope will eventually provide some measure of compensation and, more important, a verdict that will stand as a definitive legal judgment of their guilt. In Israel, they are called lone soldiers, enlistees in the IDF with no family to support and comfort them through their period of military service. Though in some cases they are native Israelis from distressed circumstances, most are olim, Jewish immigrants to the Jewish state who have left their families behind in the diaspora. It can be tough as a lone soldier. I know because I was one 35 years ago. Unfortunately, several have lost their lives in combat since the October 7th attack, and now a new book shines a light on their sacrifice titled The Heart of a Nation, honoring the fallen lone soldiers of the Swords of Iron War. And joining us is Ada Fura. She is a volunteer at the Ach Gadol Organization for Lone Soldiers. And of course, she put together this book. Ada, thank you for joining us. First of all, tell us how you came to this. What is your interest in lone soldiers?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me here. I myself served as a lone soldier, and today I volunteer with the Ach Gadol Big Brother Organization for Lone Soldiers. It's a very unique nonprofit organization that has a personal approach in which it matches between a volunteer who's an IDF veteran who served as a lone soldier and an active lone soldier today, which means every lone soldier who needs, and there are about 1,500 lone soldiers who are involved with the organization, have a volunteer who can understand what they're going through, understand the challenges and complexities that they face every day as a lone soldier, and really be there for them in every way that's possible.
Right. So let's talk about the book, how it came to specifically came to be, and talk a bit about some of the cases, because these lone soldiers, they came here, they left their, in many cases, their native countries or families behind, and then paid the ultimate sacrifice on and after October 7th.
Absolutely. So my soldier, who I had the honor of volunteering with, his name is Yonatan Din Chaim. He fell in battle in Gaza a few months into the war. And when he gave the ultimate sacrifice, I knew that I had to do something. I really felt that we need to honor him and that more people need to hear his story. He comes from a very unique background. He actually grew up in a Christian family in the States and had no connection to the Jewish community. When he was in college, he took a class on the Holocaust and became involved with the Jewish community, decided to convert, make Aliyah, and drafted the IDF. And his story is so inspiring, and I just wanted more people to hear what he had decided to do, what choices he made to be here. And I realized that every soldier in general, but especially the lone soldier ones, they have such unique stories that more people can be inspired by. And so Ach Gadol and I came together, the organization, to really write this book to commemorate the fallen lone soldiers, to share their stories. When you have Israeli soldiers who fall in battle, their families are here, they're able to, put up memorials and to have all kinds of events in which many, many people attend. But the lone soldiers, most of their families are abroad. There is not necessarily someone here for them in Israel. And so the Ach Gadol organization and other lone soldier organizations are here for them, not only when they're, giving everything they have when they're serving in the army, but also after when they can't. And so our goal with this project is to really spread their light, to share all of their stories, who they are, who they were, what they were driven by, and ultimately they gave the ultimate sacrifice to be here and to really give us the future to live here peacefully in Israel. So our goal is really to spread their light, and I think any person who's able to donate and to buy this book, every dollar that they give to the organization by purchasing this book goes directly to the lone soldiers. And what does that mean? It means supporting the lone soldiers who are serving today in everything they need, whether it's in the apartment needs, in moving needs, and dealing with Israeli bureaucracy and the army bureaucracy. And at the end of the day, also reintegrating into Israeli society. Today, so many soldiers that were, then in civilian life are now reservists. About 40% of Ach Gadol volunteers went back into the army. And so one of the things that the organization provides is psychological services to lone soldiers, to lone reservists who are reintegrating back into Israeli life after they come back from the war front. And on the other hand, I think anybody who holds this book in their hand, they're holding the stories of, at least so far, there's been 40 lone soldiers who've fallen during the war, but they're holding their stories and they can share their ambitions, their hopes, their dreams, and be inspired by them to pursue their own dreams and build their own future. And I think something that we can see across all the stories here, whether it's Israeli lone soldiers who drafted without having familial support, or it's lone soldiers who came from the international community, we can see that they all believed that they were part of something bigger. They wanted to contribute to the state of Israel. They knew that they were willing to give their lives, and ultimately they did, so that once again we could be here speaking right now, drinking our coffee, going on with our day-to-day life. And really, I think what we can do is take their light, take everything that they wanted to be, their dreams, and transform them into coming together and really following our own dreams and making a better place.
Right, we should mention, along with those who have fallen, there are a couple of lone soldiers who are being held hostage in Gaza.
There are 2 lone soldiers, Omer and Eden, who are being held in Gaza right now, along with 101 other hostages. And they're also mentioned in the book, and we hope that, by shining light on also their stories, we can bring this energy together and hopefully see them here on our side sooner.
Right, and I could say, I know the difficulties of being a lone soldier,
Right.
going home to either an empty room or an empty apartment without a family to support you. This didn't exist when I was around. I mean, do you think the Israelis have come to appreciate these young people who come here and have the double burden of making aliyah, immigrating to Israel, and then immediately being thrust into the situation of being in the army?
Absolutely. I think as time goes on, more Israelis are really aware of lone soldiers. I think also because a lot of Israelis are the ones who are serving across the whole army, they come face to face with soldiers. Even from something as, hearing someone with an accent, it's already getting people to ask questions. And then their parents are encouraging them to bring these friends home. And I think there's so many people who are willing to support and willing to help lone soldiers overcome these challenges and these complexities that they're going through.
Right, and they are a bridge between Israel and, of course, in many cases,
Absolutely.
the diaspora.
Absolutely.
Adafura, the organization is the Ach Gadol Organization for Lone Soldiers, and the book is The Heart of a Nation, honoring the fallen lone soldiers of the Swords of Iron War. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very
Jewish World
much.
Weekly.
Thank you.
The Jewish National Fund, or JNF, is the philanthropic organization famous for its role in funding the creation of the State of Israel through its land purchases, tree planting campaigns, and other programs that have built up the Jewish state over the years. Today, the JNF is also focused on rebuilding the Israeli communities devastated on October 7th and strengthening the Zionist ties between Israel and the diaspora. Our senior U.S. correspondent Mike Wagenheim attended the annual JNF conference last week in Dallas, Texas, and filed this report.
Well, when one thinks of the Jewish National Fund USA, one tends to think about planting trees in Israel. But it's been a completely different situation, especially since October 7th. JNF USA has been helping to rebuild communities that have been devastated from the massacre and since from ongoing attacks up north. Here in Dallas this weekend, Jewish National Fund USA held its global conference for Israel with over 2,500 attendees. And the CEO, Russell Robinson, told us the organization's helping to rebuild Israel even in the midst of an active war zone.
A year ago, we came together at this global conference, and we were in a trauma state, the whole Jewish world. A year later, we have the pain, we have the memory, but we also have a year of winning. Just think about it. A year ago, we were talking about people who may not move back to their homes in the Israel envelope. A year later, because of our work and because of the real determination of everybody in Israel, across the world, 80% of the people who moved back to their homes in the Israel envelope, 80%. And things are happening. Now, we're still in the trauma for the poor people in the north who are facing inhumane issues. Can you imagine away from your home 12, 13, 14 months? So we're going to know where we have been, but we know where we're going. And with over 4,000 volunteers from America who have been to Israel through the Jewish National Fund, we intend to bring more there and build that connection.
Several Israeli community leaders we spoke with here in Dallas told us that Jewish National Fund USA has come through in unexpected and sometimes unimaginable ways in the aftermath of October 7th.
So one of our biggest challenge right now is to help our people to reimagine the Galilee, how it will look like the day after, how we can build together with them a picture of the future. And JNF USA is leading two of the most iconic projects right now. First is the Galilee Culinary Institute, and the second is the Medical Center, both of them in the middle of a war zone. And one of the things that make us, the residents of the Galilee, so proud in JNF USA that they keep moving forward.
And we've managed over this past year to think of an amazing way of helping many, many small businesses keep afloat. We put together support packages for IDF soldiers on the border in the south and in the north. We've put together support packages for evacuated families, and many Americans have bought these online packages, and they're filled with quality products of small businesses, wonderful coffee and honey, and if it's evacuated families, it can be games for the children and books and wine. And these products have helped buying them. And we've sold over 19,000 packages since the beginning of the war.
What JNF USA did for us was allow us to go from surviving to dreaming, from thinking what's the next move for the next hour to what's the next move for the next year, and help us to reclaim the belief that Re'im is a very good place to live, and Re'im can still be very attractive, especially for young families.
I remember Russell Robinson calling me and saying, Michal, I'm going to write a plan. And I said to him, Russell, we are not available to start now to strategize to the future. Right now we are in survival mode. And he said, I got it. And he started to send us material about the different direction of the strategic of rebuilding together, Livnot Beyachad, and bringing volunteers immediately in December already. More than 4,000 volunteers came to our communities, the entire envelope, and really hand in hand worked with our communities and did whatever they can to support us, but also to help us to go back home.
So many in attendance here in Dallas this weekend told us that if there is one bright spot that could have emerged out of the October 7th tragedy, it is that now Israeli Jews and American Jews have become more understanding of each other and ever more connected, reflected in the fact that 2,500 people were here this weekend and even more had to be turned away for lack of space. Reporting from the JNF USA Global Conference for Israel in Dallas, Texas, Mike Wagenheim, I-24 News.
And that's our program. Thank you for joining us on Jewish World Weekly on I-24 News.